Hello, Foxy listeners, and welcome to tuning into this episode. We're going to figure out how we can make soup, sex, and having a laugh all work together. So let's dive in. I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. So, how do soup, sex, and laughter work together? And what the heck do all three of those have to do with collaborations? Well, I want to dive in that today in our short little condensed episode. So, for those of you that are just tuning in for the first time, I decided to do a new series where I'm going to talk to you about various different collaborations that some big and small organizations have done and get you to sort of think outside of the box in different ways that you can use this type of thing for your business. So, the first thing that we're going to talk about is soup. Well, what does that have to do with it? Well, have you heard of a book called Chicken Soup for the Soul? This is an amazing series that was actually started in 1993. And it really was kind of a simple idea when it started, that people could help each other by sharing their own personal stories. And for years, the founders of this had been motivational speakers, Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen, who really talked about inspiring stories about themselves and then shared about other people that were sharing with them. And so they created the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And what is amazing is that this book was compiled of stories from a bunch of different people. And that's where a co-author collaboration comes into play because they had the product, the Chicken Soup for the Soul book. They had talked about this a lot, but what they wanted were stories from different people from all walks of life and all avenues. So by reaching out to their audience and saying, come back with us, share your stories, share what you're going through, they were able to write numerous books. Hundreds of them, I'm sure, are published today. And 30 years after they started sharing these happiness and inspirational stories through the books, they started doing a podcast. They have educational programs. They even have dog and cat food, an entertainment business which distributes TV, film, and video content, and apps and more. So, this small idea of sharing stories has really blossomed into a global brand, all because they asked those people that were interested in what they had to do and say to share their stories and allow them to then publish them and share them with the world. So now, how does sex become involved in this? Well, that one is also co-authoring. So whether you like them or not, it doesn't matter how you feel about them, but Playboy and Penthouse were the kings of doing things like this. They had a whole section, so I'm told, in their magazine that was readers that could write in to tell a story. So, and then they would get published. Well, this was an amazing way to think of drumming up business because what not only happened is they were having their customers write content for them, stuff that they wanted to hear, imaginary or not, it didn't matter. And they were then in turn kind of reaping the benefits of it. But their sales were going up because these people that were writing in were buying edition after edition, hoping that their story was going to be the one that was published. So, a really great way, a little bit of a different avenue, but a great way to sort of beef up their magazine and have some buy in from their ideal client. All right. So, we've briefly talked about soup, we've talked about sex. How does laughter come in? Well, it comes in two different parts. One is I always remember being younger, and my grandfather had a subscription to Reader's Digest. And there was always people who would write in for different stories, would get to do editorial bits, but there was joke pages. Laughter is the best medicine is one I remember, and I can't quite remember what the second one is. So if you're listening to this episode and you remember what the second joke page was, let me know. But they were always my favorite thing to read. And a lot of it was the readers going, I've got a great joke that would fit with this. And they would just simply give a little shout out. Sometimes it was just their name at the bottom. And that person would get to say that they were published in an episode of Reader's Digest. Now, it's such a simple thing from a business standpoint. It's not costing you much. Your customers are already invested. They're wanting to see their name published in print. It's kind of an exciting thing. And you don't have to worry about creating all of this content to go into these magazines. So now, how can you use this type of collaboration in the business that you are right now? Well, exactly the same way. Quite often I hear my clients say that they struggle because they want to put out a weekly or a monthly newsletter, but they struggle sometimes for content or knowing exactly what needs to be related. These types of avenues of co author can be exactly what you can use, not only to get the investment of your ideal client, but to really be able to use it as a research module to figure out what are they looking for? What questions are they pondering? What advice are they thinking other people want to hear? And best of all, it's saving you tons of time because you're not having to write all of this content. Now, let's say it's not a newsletter that you do. Well, what you're listening to right now, my podcast, is full of collaborations. I collaborate all the time between the guests that I have on, different people that submit topics, people that give me expert point of views, and those listeners that write in, which by the way, I love when you do. So please never stop doing and say, hey, I would really love it if you talk on this, or I would really love it if you find an expert that can speak on this particular topic. So it's really allows me to not have to do a lot of research because I'm hearing directly from the people who are invested in me. You can also use this for advertising. This could be doing a poster or mail campaign, radio campaign, TV campaign. Think of it as finding somebody who does something similar to you, or maybe something that is complementary to what it is that you offer. Is there a way that you can team up to co author some advertising that's going to entice both your audience, their audience, and a new demographic who maybe never thought of either one of you together? So, really kind of think outside of the box because it's those outside of the box ads that really catch people's attention that you're like, oh, I really wouldn't have put those two things together, but that makes a lot of sense now that I think about it. So, these are just a few ways that you can use co authoring to be able to generate some more content, some more material, and less time in trying to figure out exactly what your audience is searching for. Because that's something that I think no matter how long you've been in business for, people always struggle with it. So, think of some great ideas on how you can do co authoring, whether it's in a book, a magazine, a podcast, or advertising, and let me know what ideas you come up with. I love hearing some of the out of the box thinking that you guys do. So, what kind of co authoring have you been involved in? Do you want to be involved in? And let's start making some connections. And if you know of other people that are already doing this co authoring, let me know. Send me links to what it is that they put out. And if it's you, send me your link. I want to research it, and you too could be featured on an upcoming episode. So, get out there, find somebody that you can work with, make co authoring collaboration the next check on your list. And no matter what you're doing, make sure that you take time to have fun. Because as I always say, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?